Hi Booktube! Now recently there has been some controversy around the whole hashtag be critical idea and also about reading diversely, and I want to address some of those in this video. Now some people have been calling this a scandal, and I'd prefer to call it a debate than a scandal. I mean, Alex Day, that was a scandal. This, I think, is a debate, a discussion, and hopefully an opportunity as well. I should probably start by saying that I don't think anyone should feel pressured to make certain content on their videos. I mean, it's an open platform. You can make what you want. Even if you don't make reviews at all, then you can still be a booktuber. I like to make reviews the heart of my channel because that's what I really enjoy doing, that's what I find interesting, that's what I enjoy watching other people do. Reading critically is kind of just what I do, and I do it automatically in many ways. And I think most people do as well, and maybe don't necessarily realise that they're doing it. So I think that's something that I want to talk about as well, is that we all review critically, we all think critically, but that we maybe do so to different extents. So the whole reading and reviewing diversely debacle, I think, started with Ariel Bosset's live show, which was end of last week, I think. Now, she made a casual comment saying that if you're going to be a booktuber, then you need to make critical reviews. It was along those lines. I am paraphrasing there. I don't personally know Ariel, but from what I know of her, I don't think she meant any offence by that. She comes across as a lovely person, as somebody who is open to different ideas, and she has apologised for that comment, and I think we should just leave it at that. Now, also very recently, Baz Pierce did a live show in which he addressed this, and it's caused something of a Twitter storm. Barry also talks about reading diversely in his live show, and I think those two things are linked. Those two issues have brought up some of the same problems about booktube and peer pressure. I'm going to try and address those. Some people have taken this as a personal attack on their reading habits and their reviewing habits, and from what I can see, that isn't the intention at all. The intention is to promote the reading of diverse books and also to promote this idea of thinking critically and reviewing critically. It's not meant to single out any one person or to make anyone feel isolated. So reading diversely and reading critically, I think, are connected, because in order to read more diversely we need to be critical of what we choose to read, and then there's also being critical of the books that we're actually reading. There's been a lot of chat about the star rating system as well, and I'm not going to directly address this. I should mention that reading critically doesn't necessarily mean being critical of that book or attacking certain parts of that book. It's about looking at a text from a variety of angles and weighing up the goods and bads and saying what sort of people would enjoy this, because not everyone will enjoy every book that you read or every book that you enjoy. And there are so many ways of being critical as well, from the more emotional side of reading to the more technical aspects to where it sort of fits within a historical context or within the canon or within a series. Reading and reviewing critically can mean anything from a plot summary to a PhD thesis. We've also been talking a bit about the publishing industry and how we as consumers influence the publishing industry. I think maybe we're a little bit ambitious when we talk about the influence that we have as individuals. As a singular person, publishers have more influence on me than I have on publishers. But BookTube as a whole is very different. It's interesting because you have certain individuals who have a lot of influence over their subscribers, who are ultimately consumers. And some of these booktubers have thousands or tens of thousands of subscribers. That's a big potential market for publishers. Subscribers who listen to these booktubers do take their recommendations seriously. This is why I think reading and reviewing critically is important. A simple wording change, say the difference between I didn't like this and this wasn't for me, could have a serious impact on how those consumers behave. Consumer or potential consumer may only watch your video and base their decision off of your review rather than also going to other places. Of course, we don't always read to be critical, at least not entirely, but I do think we are always critical to some degree. Even in the term guilty pleasures, there is an element of criticism. That book might not be high literature, but it still has some merit in your enjoyment of it. I think it's impossible to read something without being critical of it to some degree. And this is important to note because all of you are already being critical. This is because we always come to a text with expectations, with past experiences, and with our own moral compass. It's also pretty much impossible to be 100% critical when you're reading because we read for enjoyment. Now, the issue that has arisen recently is that some people are feeling personally attacked by this concept. You can see how this happens, where you've got these strong, often authoritative speakers on YouTube, because on this platform often the booktuber will assume the role of lecturer or something similar, or at least it can come across that way. And what it really is one individual contributing to hopefully a wider discussion. Perhaps we should look at some examples to see how this whole reading critically thing works. I will start with the Bronte sisters. When I first read Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, I saw Heathcliff and Mr. Rochester as romantic heroes. Incidentally, or maybe not so incidentally, that's how they're always portrayed in film and television adaptations. When I look at them now, it's quite obvious to me that they're not romantic heroes. They're both manipulative and two-faced and think that it's all right to lock up women and to control them. Okay, that's a whole nother rant, but if, like I used to, you think that either of these characters would make a good husband, I think maybe you need to go and have a look at their characters a bit more closely. Please don't hate me. Then we have perhaps my favourite book of all time, which is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Now, this is an incredible novel and I love it with all of my heart, but it wouldn't pass the Bechdel test. If you don't know what the Bechdel test is, it's basically a litmus test to show female presence in usually films. It's intended for films, but I also apply it to literature. I'll link something below about that because otherwise we'll be here forever. This book only has one main female character and she is kind of sidelined for most of the book. Now, for the feminist in me, this is a problem, especially as Donna Tartt is a female writer. I have some issues around that, but I still love this book. I think it's important to know that you can still love something and have problems with it. So from some of my favourite books on to one of my not so favourite books, which is Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. Now, with Twilight, I actually think that it's dangerous to read it without being critical. And I'm not saying that you can't enjoy it, because obviously so many people have. On that first reading, I thought this is a lovely love story, as many people did and do. Now with this one, I actually think it's dangerous to read without some level of criticism. My reason for saying this is that I think that it portrays a very abusive relationship, or at least a potentially abusive relationship. And I think a lot of young people read this and look up to that as the kind of relationship that they want, when actually Edward is pretty creepy and very manipulative. I won't go into too much detail about Twilight here because that's not really what this video is about, but I do think that reading about an abusive relationship like that and idealising it is dangerous, and for that reason reading critically is really important. So you can still enjoy it, but I think it's really important to be aware of its potentially harmful side effects. Okay, before I wrap up, I want to talk about the whole reading diversely thing because I do feel like that is kind of linked to this whole discussion. My view is that if publishers aren't going to promote writers of colour, then we need to take matters into our own hands, and we have the power to do that. Now, personally, I've been terrible at reading diversely in the past, and BookTube has helped me to look at what I'm reading more critically. Through Goodreads, I've realised that only about a third of the books that I've read have been by female authors, and that only a teeny tiny fraction have been by authors of colour. BookTube has helped me to discover these writers of colour and to get recommendations from channels like Rincy's and like Steve Reed's books, and I wouldn't have found these otherwise. It's difficult to find authors by race or ethnicity or nationality on somewhere like Amazon or Book Depository. Even if you're browsing around your local bookshop, often you only have the name to go by, so it's great to have recommendations from BookTube. So if you do have a desire to read books by diverse authors, then Goodreads and YouTube are great places to find them. And also, if your favourite booktubers are recommending books by diverse authors, then you're probably more likely to go and pick them up. The counter-argument to the Reading Diversely campaign is that oh, well, I just want to read books that I find interesting. I don't care about the author. Of course you should read what you're interested in, but we don't get to hear through publishers about these diverse authors so much, and there might be stuff in there that you find really interesting. So if you hear about them through BookTube, then hopefully you'll be more likely to go and find them. So the more diverse books that people are exposed to, the more likely they are to find books that they think will be interesting to them. So if you're interested in the whole reading diversity thing, then talk about the books, the diverse books you enjoy on your channel, and hopefully that will encourage others to go and pick them up. The reading diversity tag is all about this, and if you're interested, please go and check it out and do the tag, because I think it's a great way of finding new recommendations. To conclude this rather long-winded video: 1. Critical doesn't necessarily mean bad. 2. Reading and reviewing critically is going to be different for every person. 3. I do think it's at least worth considering that your viewers are also consumers, and what you say can have an influence over what they buy. Just, it's something that's worth thinking about. 4thly though, and most importantly, YouTube is an open platform. You are free to vlog as you decide to vlog. These are just some suggestions from my point of view, one individual point of view. I really hope I haven't offended anyone, and I also really hope that this discussion continues, because I think it's really interesting and important as well. Let me know what you think. Do you think that reviews need to be critical in the way that I've defined critical? Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you don't all hate me now. I will link some things in the description if you want to know more. And yeah, thanks for watching and goodbye.